There are thousands of beers on the market. What makes yours special?
Well, Jerry, like any great beer, we start with great ingredients. And because we brew and come from Kilkenny in the Midlands of Ireland, we're blessed with some of the best malted barley in the world, as well as the water, the magic and secret ingredient to great beer. And that's water that's been percolating through the limestone base of Kilkenny for over 300 million years. So we're very lucky that it comes to us in that way. And then, of course, like any great food or beer, you need a great chef or master brewer to bring it together. So we have a very special man by the name of Ian Hamilton, who's brewed Guinness and Smithwick's and Budweiser all over the world for 32 years. And he brings that together like a very fine Michelin star chef. He's a master of bringing those flavors, those ingredients together, and getting a phenomenal flavor from a classic red ale. So in fact, it won a very special award a couple of years ago when we started out, where Ian and ourselves decided to enter into a competition in Burton-on-Trent in the UK. It's known as the Oscars of the beer world. It's been going since 1886, so 1,300 beers from 45 markets around the world show up, and we're blind taste tested 3 times by 45 master brewers from around the world. And we came out not only on top in red ale with the gold medal, but we also had the opportunity to win the overall champion ale trophy. So currently we're the best ale in the world. So apparently we love it and we think it's great.
And
But
I believe, Alan, they had to taste it 3 different times.
3 different times, 1,300 beers. What a job! Where do I sign up for that one?
Okay. Let's go back to the beginning of Sullivan's of Kilkenny. You got a story to tell. It's a real story. I really enjoyed reading it. I want you to tell our listeners about it.
Great, I'll do my best. It is a long one. I'll keep to the highlights. But we go back to 1702. That's when the Sullivan's Brewery first opened up on James's Street in Kilkenny in the Midlands of Ireland. It grew and prospered for a couple of 100 years. It worked its way through famines and fires and wars, indeed, until what we call the infamous day in 1918 in Deauville in France, where young Master Sullivan, a descendant of Richard the founder, was celebrating the end of World War I in northern France in Deauville at a racetrack, and he bet the brewery on a horse, and as we say, the horse is still running. He lost that bet and the brewery folded.
Bet the house, huh?
So opportunistically it fell into the hands of the Smithwick's family, the very famous brewing family, the other brewing family of Kilkenny. And Smithwick's, Paul, our chairman, and Dan, his son, who's also a co-founder and our financial director, we discussed bringing this story back to life. And there was no brewery. When Smithwick's closed their operation in 2012, there was no brewing operation left in Kilkenny. A medieval city with 800 years of brewing tradition, and there was no brewery left. So we decided, we were inspired by that to bring back great brewing to the great city of Kilkenny.
Where did the name Maltings come from? Maltings Red Ale?
Yeah, that's our first beer. That's the red ale, classic red ale that I'm talking about. It's just named after the original brewery building in James's Street. So the Maltings, it still stands today in Kilkenny. It's used by other offices in the county council there now, but it's still the shape and form of the original brewery building with the kiln and the chimneys and so on. It's a beautiful building.
You say red ale? Why red?
Well, red is classified in the world of beer. There's different classifications of beer, and Irish red is so famous internationally. It's given its own class, its own classification by the Beer Style Guide, and it just talks about it's reflecting obviously the color of the roasted malt that we use in the brew. So in our beer we use 4 different malted barleys. 3 of them are beautiful crisp ale malts, and then we use a roast. And normally you put 4, 5, 6% of your roast will go in there to give it that beautiful ruby red color. A stout would have maybe 8, 9, 10% of roasted malt. So that's what gives the colour to the beer.
This is like poetry, you know. I'm reading here, it says the rich biscuit and gentle caramel notes. Poetic.
Yeah, well,
Talk
like
about
I
the
said,
biscuit now. What about the biscuit?
yeah, it started. We were trying to explain. There are notes that we use to explain to our customers and to drinkers, and we try to break it down in simple terms because we're not. We're from the Midlands. We don't get up ourselves too much. We try to keep it very plain and very straightforward in descriptive language. And when we look at beer, and certainly Ian and ourselves, we see yellow beers, lagers and pilsners. They're kind of in the bread category. When you look at ale, you start looking at the biscuit category, and because we've got 4 blended malts in our beer, it tends to bring those caramel notes with a lovely clean finish to it. So, and you move on to your porters and stouts, which are more of the cake and Christmas cake variety.
Four composites of beer is what? You have water?
You have water, which is probably the most important. That can be 95% of the ingredients, depending on your ABV and so on. And then you have your malted barleys, and then you sprinkle in the hops, depending on what style or flavors you're shooting for. And then the magic ingredient, which brings them all together, is the yeast. And in our case, we use a cask ale yeast. It's a very traditional yeast that's used in Irish brewing. Also British brewing. It's been used for centuries. It's beautiful because in our beer we have to ferment it up to 4 times longer than any other beer on the market. So
why?
Because it's slow acting. It works extremely hard, and it's very good at blending those malts in with the hops. So what you do at the end, the end product is this beautifully balanced beer. So you're getting malt on the nose and on the palate, and then you get gentle bite of the hops on the back of the throat.
So it's more costly to brew time-wise because of 4 times, right?
I can tell you, in a startup business, you get a lot of it's a cash flow nightmare because it does tie up our beer in the tanks. But it's worth it because without our, we can have a great story, which we do, and a very long one. But if you don't have a great product to back it up, we're not going very far.
What about the barley? Do you source that locally?
We do. We have farmer partners around the city of Kilkenny. We bring the barley in from those farms and from the fields, and including Alan Smithick, who's a member of the team and part of the Smithicks family. He's also a Sullivan descendant, and he, with those barleys, we send them to the Malting Company of Ireland. There's only 2 places in Ireland you can malt barley. One of them is all Guinness, and the other is this independent company in Cork. So we know the owner and the CEO. He went to school with our brewer, and he does us a favour by malting them in small batches for us. So it's a very special.
I'm just thinking of the advantage to the community to having you buy that barley from the local farmers.
Yeah, I think they hugely appreciate what we do. So like any tight-knit community, I think when you set up a business, you want to utilize as much of the resource locally as you can. And we go out of our way to source, with the guys on the team, we source our cars, our trucks, all locally, including the ingredients. So, the malted barley is very, very important to us. I should say that Midlands barley in Ireland is in huge international demand. There are many American craft brewers and indeed across Europe that are seeking it out because it's very strong. Because of our climate, because of the soil, the mineral soil with the limestone base, it stands up well in a brew. Because when you're brewing beer, you boil a lot of things and you boil it a lot. Mm-hmm. So you need ingredients with substance that can stand up to that and hold its flavour with backbone through the brew. So it's a very special barley.
We're going to take a break now, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Sullivan's in America. Now, how long is the product in America?
Well, Gerry, we started 2.5 years ago. We targeted the Great Lakes region. We started in Buffalo, and lots of people ask us why, and we simply answer the Great Lakes. When you go into the cities and the communities of the Great Lakes, they feel very much like the Midlands of Ireland. And that's because of the close-knit community, hard-working mentality and approach to life, and they're sports-loving, beer-appreciating people, and we can connect with that. And so we arrived in Buffalo 2.5 years ago, and it's been hard yards to get it right, to get the business, the beer brewing in Ireland shipped in here properly, find the right partners to find the right customers, the bars, the restaurants, and the grocery shops to sell the beer. So we've worked hard to build that up in Buffalo, and we feel we've incubated that now. We've learned a lot of really good lessons about how to do business better in the States, and now it's time to expand, and that's what's bringing us to Cleveland.
Distribution is hugely important in the beer industry. What are you doing about that locally here?
Yeah, actually that's very unique to the United States, and I spend time explaining this to our investors and stakeholders back home. Since Prohibition in the States, there's been a series of laws that require them to be distance between the brewery or distillery, the distribution arm, and then the end customer being the bar or the restaurant or hotel. So you can't do business efficiently in the States without having that distributor partner. And there's only a handful to choose from in any given market. Each state, each city has its own players, if you like. So finding the right partner is huge in the States.
Who will you be using in the Cleveland area? What distributor?
We're going to use that. We're with the House of LaRose.
Well known.
Yeah,
family business.
A family business, third generation. Jim LaRose is a huge supporter of the business. We've met him through another family distributor in Buffalo, Paul Vukulik and his family. So we feel very privileged to meet these people, and when we come in with our small brand and our very special beer, what we think is special, they look after it. They understand that what we're doing is different and quite special.
When you approach them first, do they taste the beer and say, "This is good stuff, I want to represent you"? Do they do that?
They do, and they have people like cicerones, professionally trained beer tasters and brewers, and they'll get them to taste it, and then they'll go to customers that they trust for years. They've built up relationships over decades, and they'll get them to taste the beer. So they won't go near us without a product that stands up to the story and consistent with the heritage that we have.
So what do you see as the long range plans here? You're in Cleveland now. You come from Buffalo to Cleveland. After you conquered Cleveland, which I'm sure you will.
World dominance, Gerry. No, we'll keep focused. We'll move at our pace now across the Great Lakes. That's the strategy. That's the plans for the foreseeable. We'll move. You do move city by city. County by county. That's important because not only are the bars important to pour the draft beer, but you've got cans, packaged beer. So we've got to go to supermarkets and retailers who generally have chains of stores. So we've got to make sure that we can cover all of those in a given area or state eventually. So we'll move across. We have Columbus in our sights, Toledo, and in fact south of here, into Pittsburgh.
Talk to me about the management of your company. The directors, the managers, the master brewer, you mentioned them before, but you are the CEO, Alan Quinn.
That's
now, I want you to explain the name first. There'll be a lot of people listening are going to say, Quinn, Quane. Can you explain that name?
Yeah, I get that a lot. It's actually in Oscailge, it's O'Coon, and it's of the harbour. So apparently my
Coon is the Gaelic for a harbour, right?
That's right, yeah, or a safe port.
Anna Coon, I remember that poem.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, good memory. Great memory. It's so that's where my people came from. It's South Limerick, North Kerry. My grandfather came out of Ardfert in Northern Kerry, and great GAA man and background. So that's my.
You're an instant friend of my wife Nellie now, because her father came from County Kerry.
They're great people down there in the kingdom.
Yes, they are. And how about the other manager? You mentioned the Smithwicks. What part do they play?
Yeah, a really important one. I mean, Paul Smithick is the 8th generation of the great brewing family in Kilkenny. He's our chairman. We have Dan Smithick, his son, the 9th generation of the family, and he's our FD, finance guy. And we have Alan Smithick, who's a cousin of theirs, who, as I said, is also a Sullivan. So you can imagine growing up, you know, through the 17 and 1800s, two great breweries in Kilkenny. There was, you know, they shared a political life, a social life, and also intermarried. And that's why they were very, very close. And that's why, you know, Alan Smithick is also a Sullivan. So his grandmother would have been Bessie O'Connell Sullivan, and that lady was the granddaughter of Daniel O'Connell. So Alan is the 4th great grandson of the great liberator, and he's very humble about that, but he's certifiable, and he's checked that out.
I'll tell him that one day he can address a monster rally like Daniel O'Connell did for Sullivan's Ale.
I will, and he's a great orator, Alan, and then of course we have Ian Hamilton, who I've talked about, a world-class brewer. You know, a man who's brewed all the top brands of beer around the world. He's recognised. He's actually just been inducted into the Hall of Fame at the London Institute of Brewing and Distilling. He wouldn't tell you that, but he's very humble.
That is something you probably don't learn in school or in college. It's something you grow up with, I suppose, and you acquire it, and you just learn as you go along. Is that correct?
Is that the art and science of brewing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a formal training.
Is there?
Yeah, indeed. You know, Harriet Watt is a very famous, brewing institution, the UK. You know, Ian is classically trained in that regard, but he spent much of his career brewing in Africa. He would have brewed Guinness in Nigeria, Cameroon, and I think what's relevant about that is, you know, the ingredients can vary quite greatly in Africa. I've worked there myself for Guinness in the commercial capacity, and it's it varies from week to week and month to month. But whatever comes to the back door of the brewery, he's got to make sure that he produces a world-class, consistent beer at the front door. So he's a master at that.
Is it true that alcohol content varies from country to country?
It does, yeah. I think alcohol has a great history of, culture and its role in society. So, you know, in Africa, traditionally, they're very strong beers. And that's...
Like, what would the alcohol content? 5%, 6%?
You're in the 7.5% range. So, you know, for instance, Guinness in Nigeria, 7.5%. It's far an extra stout, and that's a throwback to when the breweries of Northern Europe were shipping beer down to the colonies, if you like, into the African nations, and they believed they had to bump the alcohol to keep it sterilized for the weeks and weeks it spent on the deck of the ship in the sun. So, you know, and there's a truth to that science, but that's how it grew up. So people, you know, in their society got used to that and grew up with that kind of strength of beer.
We talked about yesterday about brewing. I asked you about maybe not brewing in Ireland, and you're not going to do that. You're going to brew in Kilkenny.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the mission of the business was to bring back world-class brewing to Kilkenny, and that's what we intend to do.
There.
Absolutely, and I think the brand, you know, we're very brand-led, and what that means is we'll stay true to the story. So, you know, we're building a promise and a relationship with our customers and hopefully our consumers in Cleveland, and we're saying it's world-class ingredients, it's put together by an incredible master brewer, it's great beer consistently, and we're not going to mess with that.
Okay. Now I got to ask you, what's it feel like to leave the big corporate world which you're a part of? You want to talk a bit about that, about your past experience in the business? I think it's quite colourful, actually.
Yeah.
What you did before.
Do
you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've many years at this stage. I'm aging myself now, but certainly in the beer business, I've been lucky to work with some great companies. I've had some roles in there. You know, I was head of innovation for Heineken in Western Europe. They have, you know, dozens and dozens of great brands of beer that I got to play with and get to manage and bring to market. Same with Diageo. Really, Guinness was mostly focused in Africa, the UK. You know, Nigeria is the biggest market for Guinness around the world, and then the UK and Ireland.
Is that?
That's true.
Nigeria is the biggest market for Guinness.
Yeah, absolutely.
that.
Yeah, they love it. It's bottled Guinness. It's
Yeah.
not the draft that we know, but it's a great drink and a great brand. So I got to, I spent some time on the world of spirits, Johnny Walker and Bailey's, and I managed them in different countries. So I've had a great time.
So here you're coming from the pinnacle of the business world to entrepreneurship, starting in the beginning. It's like a startup, actually. How are you adjusting to it, Alan? How did you make that adjustment?
You should probably ask my wife and family
Ah,
that. You'd
there
get the
you
real
are.
story. I think I've loved it. I've always thought I wanted to do this. I felt people ask me why didn't you do it before, and I'd say two things. I never found the right opportunity, but that can be an excuse at times. And secondly, just finding the way to express. I've always had roles in those companies that allowed me to do, have a lot of scope in it.
You've probably been in many countries throughout the world, huh?
I have. I've been very lucky and very privileged in that. So I've sold in many countries. And the one thing it comes back to is delivering a quality product consistently to consumers, and just trying to build that trust between each other. Now that doesn't matter whether it's Melbourne or Lagos.
So the challenges here in America do not daunt you one bit, do they?
Well, it's a big challenge. There's no question.
It's a big country.
It is. It's 50 different markets, particularly in the drinks business. But really welcome the challenge. I love when I get out of bed in the morning. I look forward to my day. I love what I do, and I think I'm the luckiest guy alive.
And you're off to another city after you leave Cleveland, and more challenges, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, actually, I fly back to Kilkenny after this, but I've been on the road for a couple of weeks. So we've been selling now through. I visited Albany, Saratoga, in the capital region, up to Lake Placid, across to Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo. So we're starting to expand now, and it's a different stage in the business. We're no longer a startup in many ways. We're scaling up. But every city, every market we come to is a startup position. So it's a blank sheet. We got to work hard to build the business.
Now you will have a representative. You do have a representative here in town.
Yes, we do. As part of our philosophy of being brand led, we have the great Bridget Burkett, who's based here in Cleveland. We're very lucky to have her. She's a fantastic force of nature. She is since our business started really here formally in early June, we've done nothing but grow from strength to strength thanks to Bridget. So we're very lucky to have her.
So if somebody needs to make contact with of course everything is on the internet. We can see everything on the internet. But if somebody wants to know more about the product, you can always contact Bridget. Bridget, I want to say hello to you.
Hello, Gerry. It's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you. You have an email that people should go to?
Absolutely. They can go to Bridget at Sullivan's Brewing Company, all one word, .com.
Bridget has got married here. She married one of the Burketts that I happen to know the family very well. But you didn't come from this area originally.
I did not. I came from a small town in Merrimack. It's called Merrimack, New Hampshire. It's about 40 minutes north of Boston. I went to school in the Boston area, BC. I'm an Eagle. And we transplanted out here in 1990, and I could be a walking commercial for Northeast Ohio. Just love it. Just love it.
That's great, Bridget. And will you do that in a lot of cities? You bring somebody local on board?
Yeah, Gerry, that's part of the philosophy. Our model of business is to, create something centrally that's, high quality, and then we'll find a way to bring it to life in the market through a local lens, with the right accent.
Bridget is Northeast Ohio, is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.